It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked. Time now for a very interesting discussion. No matter what lens you look at it through, the pandemic has transformed the way we work. That's the baseline, with many employees used to the convenience of now working from home, or the lack of convenience with kids and pets and everything else. I think tensions are running high, with companies considering whether to bring their employees back to the office and what that actually means to workflow now. And we're going to take a deep dive into the pros and cons of working from home and explore why some employees are hesitant to return to the office. And joining us to chat and chew on the gristle is motivational speaker Dr. Steve Harris, as well as Ilse Marie Ekstein, Senior Facilitator and Marketing Manager at Growth Factor Consultants. They join us to offer their perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us. As I was joking earlier, I know it's early for critical thinking. It's not like every sector and industry is looking at us right now to provide answers, but it kind of feels like that. It's a new frontier.
Definitely. Well, Ilse Marie, I'm going to start off with you. What are some of the benefits for those who work from home and, you know, a bit hesitant to go back to the office?
Yes, it's a firstly, thank you so much for having both of us today.
Pleasure.
And it's a very fascinating conversation because it also depends on which sector, industry that you're in. I mean, you can't do your job effectively from home because you need,
we did try.
It's just not quite the same. And so it really depends on which industry, where you're at. And some of the benefits for the employer, of course, is the flexibility, the ability to be at home, to not commute and take on all of the, you know, the traffic
and logistical slowdowns.
The logistical slowdown. We saw the fire on, you know, one of the highways this morning. And so those are some of the benefits. And then, of course, for business, it's also the increased productivity without impacting performance. And so that's a really great cost savings. There's quite a few benefits.
And it's led to like a systems overhaul. Working with companies that are designing work systems now, that notion has changed. And yes, if we get it right, you can maximize productivity and you can leverage every one of those positive elements. I've realized, as you quite rightly pointed out, our job plays out in the 1.5. As much as I'd want it to be the millions of people that are watching, it's not. It's this instant connection that we get with our viewers. That being said, there is a time and a place for both. So how does a company now approach this next era, Doc? When looking at the need for collaboration, for team, for social elements, which can often be the X factor in a great idea or a team really firing, with the notion of absolute flexibility and giving the employees what they want, because that matters more now than ever before. It's almost like I get the sense that people are asking, why should I work for you, as opposed to the other way around? So how do companies get this balance right?
My first answer is, why do I get the difficult question?
I gave you like 3 minutes to warm up, man. Come on.
So she gets the easy one, and you make me... That's fine. What did you say again? Unbelievable, huh?
I love it.
It's my life, you know. I can end up in whatever. So the basic question is, how do organizations adapt to this new... Is that what you're asking?
Exactly, yeah.
Most of my work is rooted in culture.
Yeah.
In other words, how do they reinvent their culture based on their strategy? So if you don't have a decent strategy around well-being, around hybrid work, around all these issues,
staff retention, essentially,
all of that, and transparently so, because if anyone starts feeling that you just duping them with your strategy, which most people say, we don't know where this company's going. We don't know where this... Yeah. And that's where the rot starts. So my opinion is it starts at strategic level, and people support what they help to create.
Yeah.
The more you can get people to buy in, whilst business is not a democracy, but you've got to play those cards. Yeah. They're going to want... And the fear is going to dominate eventually, too. You guys are duplicit. You know, you kind of not giving me what I want. So yes, it's nice to avoid the traffic, and it's nice to say, well, you can come in when you like, even though your labor contract says you've got to be here. I think it's based on that flexibility of reinventing strategy and then really, really settling the culture. I know it's a bit of a generic answer, but
yeah, no, but for sure. But we have to distill it into a notion, and I think the why matters so much more to people. I've seen in our space. post-COVID, everyone's got a why, and they're trying to now align their life path to that why, which is something that, and that's got to be a good thing. Surely, if companies can get the uptake, yeah.
I know we were talking about the benefits earlier about working from home, but I think we never got to experience that in that regard. Surely there are quite a few pain points for families working from home, you know, add the kids, add
Young
the
kids,
pets.
just leave it there.
And the ability to never be able to switch off. Ilse Marie, can you shed some light with, you know, what are some of those challenges that people have found themselves in when they are working from home?
Definitely. There's definitely a mental and emotional impact when you work from home for long, extended periods of time. And that is the challenge. So it is around, you know, it's isolation, miscommunication can come in terms of work, what is expected. When a business does not have clear strategy, clear vision, where everyone can feel included and do meaningful and significant work, the reality is that employees do become disengaged and disconnected from the business, from the culture, from the vision, the passion, and the things we want to achieve. And then we haven't spoken about, you know, the pets, the laundry, everything else that is just distraction,
just life.
Yeah, that happens, you know, at home. So I don't, in my opinion, I don't think that there is it's not either work from home or back in the office. It needs to be a hybrid. It's a little bit of both, where organizations provide flexibility, but we also organizational culture is not built with everyone at home. It is built when we're together. We're wired for connection. We are wired for community. And so it's important to bring both of those together so that we can then actively and intentionally build that culture and community within organizations.
Intention, and I'm so glad you said that. I think both of you are hinting towards having a true north. I think organizations out there can no longer have a distance between the culture and the practice. Those two have to be authentic and they have to overlap because it really does matter. And it certainly matters to young people who are plotting their course. So if you're a company looking to find a way to find that hybrid balance, that's what we're going to hone in on in our next discussion. If you're going through this process, let us know. 063-408-8863. How are you as a business manager managing this transition?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. It is your Feel Good Breakfast Show Expresso on S3, and the return to the office is a hot topic right now, with many employees feeling anxious about the prospects of returning to a traditional work environment. And we now explore some of the challenges and the opportunities of returning to the office and discuss how companies can support their employees during this transition. Now we have motivational speaker Dr. Steve Harris, as well as Ilse Marie Ekstein, Senior Facilitator and Marketing Manager at Growth Factor Consultants. They are joining us to offer their opinion.
I feel like a Jack Russell. There are just so many things that I want to get into because it speaks to where we are as a world and kind of cleaning house. Now that we have the opportunity, I spoke about rebirth earlier, kind of stripping away the dead weight when it comes to systems as well as personnel possibly. But there is this natural fear. When you go back into a social environment, things change. There's bullying, there is a social dynamic, there is baggage, there are all sorts of labels. Suddenly it becomes a different prospect. Maybe as someone who's got to apply this in a very practical sense within that workspace, what drives the fear element? Why are people hesitant to go back to work?
It's very
physically.
Very good question. Very good question. I think it is the one thing is safety. So as much as some of us might live, you know, in the world right now, like COVID is something of the past and we continue, we're doing what we need to do, it's still a very real concern. And so there are people who are scared to put themselves in physical danger.
Back in that place.
So that is the one thing that has emerged from the research. But then there's also the fear around that my flexibility, my freedom, my sense of
my connection to my
family is going to be removed. And that's why when I mentioned earlier, I don't think it is a just go back to the office situation. It's a little bit of both so that people can feel safe at work as well as safe at home. Because the office needs to be a space where energy is released, where we feel connected, energized, so that we can do better work, a space of joy.
Yeah. unless it's a conflict model. Sometimes you just got to get it off your chest, man.
Well, we're talking about an ideal world, right? Ideal world.
We're going to live in that ideal world. Steve, how can we find that balance that Ilse Marie is talking about? How can companies be encouraged to find that balance so that, you know, the employees can be back working in person together, but also maintain that flexibility, that freedom that came with working from home?
My current experience and my way I see it is it's a power dynamic, and it's not nice to admit. But if you, as the staff member, the employee, can match or trump, excuse the name.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's a safe place.
Yes,
It's a safe place.
The power of the company. So in other words, if your capacity that you're offering, if you become rare rather than just relevant, you've got a job, you're in the game, I pay you. You want to work from home, no, I don't want you to. And you've got no power to say, well, I do want to.
Yeah.
But if you increased your capacity from relevant to rare, where you're now ahead of the game and the company wants you, the dynamic has changed. And you can shift the needle as to how much the hybrid thing. But if you're just regular Joe, you're in trouble, I hate to say.
You've got to differentiate. Yeah, for sure. And this is happening more and more where people are leaving companies, and it's helping the company because it's less of an overhead. They hire themselves back as a consultant, where presumably you can be more maybe kind of hyper-focused with how you're spending your money, and again, it becomes an outcomes-based situation. But that says system overhaul. That says you've got to know what you're dealing with. You've got to know how your staff are interacting. So as a company, it's an interesting thought process. Do we start with re-examining ourselves, our ethos, or do we look at what our employees require in that space? Well, let's put it to some of the employees right now and get some of your voice notes as to how you feel about this and some of your social comments. Let's start with, I can't see that, Shamkile.
Shamkile, let's see. Shamkile says working home is good when you have private place, but if you don't have, it's better to work at work. That makes sense. Marina says, COVID is still around. If you don't work with public, then stay at home should be allowed, but some employees don't agree. So there is that power dynamic that you were talking about, Steve. And, you know, it is quite a struggle, I think, for a lot of people facing the anxiety that's now coming into play with now all of a sudden going back into the office. How can we, you know, how important is it for an employee's well-being to be of the right mindset to impact that workspace and that work environment and energy that they're now going to re-enter?
Yeah, go for it.
Both of you.
Yeah, I mean, you can both wait. Yeah,
Well, I'll start.
You see? That's wonderful.
It's critical. It's critical for employee well-being, but also realizing that my mindset as an employee, I have a responsibility as well. It is not just the organization. So I do agree with Shamkile, you know, like when I have a private space at home to work and I have the resources, so we're talking stage 5 and 6 load shedding. Do I have a UPS? Do I have an inverter? Do I have all the resources that I need to actually do my job? So that is consider that, you know, consider the job. Where does the job derive value from, the work that I am doing? If I am a cashier, you know, at a local retailer, I cannot do my work from home. So that is the one thing. And then I have a responsibility as an employee to educate myself, to learn new skills. We went into COVID, you know, leaders, managers, employees, we weren't taught you know, skills that can help us in a hybrid world. We kind of like went into this, you know, thing, and it all just kind of like happened. So there's a lot that employees can do to just keep their wellness in mind.
Yeah, and we can joke about wellness, you know, as this nice to have. I'd love to know within the sporting world how much mental wellness has cost people over this time within the business framework. And I myself went through one of the greatest mental challenges, being separated from my family, and walked a dream for 6 months. I cannot imagine, when I look back at now that we've come out of that, but I think people need to take on board that, yes, there was trauma involved with COVID on every level of life, and we get that. And as much as this feels like probably the greatest challenge your organization has gone through, it's an opportunity for authenticity. And if you want people to stay at your company, that's all you need to lean on. Everything else will work itself out authenticity. I promise you, out of the 10,000 people that I get to interview, that's it. So be true to yourself and speak to your employer about what you need. Now let's lighten the mood just a little bit with some amazing music.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you for rejoining what has been the most enriching, enlightening, and yes, a little bit terrifying conversation. We are talking about going back to the office, weighing up the pros and the cons of going back into that social space after, well, the perceived freedoms of being able to run our own lives, free will at home. We love that. But it does pose some really interesting questions. And we've got motivational speaker Dr. Steve Harris, as well as Ilza Marie Extian from Growth Factor, who have been guiding us through this process. So thank you so much. We've been speaking a lot. So I hope I'm not going to expend all of your day's energy, but it is such a kind of a valid take on where we are as a world right now. It's amazing.
I just want to know, in closing, for an employee sitting at home now, finishing off or starting their workday from home, and they know going back to the office is looming. Ilza Marie, do you have any advice for that person sitting there and dreading going back into the office? And I suppose the same counts for a mom finishing off maternity leave and now rejoining her workspace. What advice do you have for those individuals?
Take it on with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Try it out. If it doesn't work, speak up. And take every day as it comes. Think about the opportunities that it presents, when you can be back at the office, see your manager, leader,
Your mates.
Mates, you know, the girls, the guys, see everyone around the coffee pot.
I was going to say the barista, because a lot of companies have introduced the barista as part of that come back to work strategy. Yeah, come back to our communal workspace. I want to open our floor and go behind the scenes kind of. We're going to do a little inception here and talk to Bianca. You guys, being our social media team, have had a bit more flexibility than a lot of us needing to be practically on board. How did you manage that transition back? And you've had to find a balance within your team. What's that been like?
Discipline.
Discipline.
You have to have discipline with yourself at home. I think you have distractions in the office and you have distractions at home.
Yeah.
And you need to really find out what works for you and just, I put on the music and I just zone out and focus. And I do find that I can do that at home really well, but you have to find what works for you.
How often a day do you go surfing?
Sean? I usually check the surf report with him. I stay like 1 kilometer from the beach so I can sneak out for a quick lunch hour surf.
Exactly. It's called work-life balance,
Absolutely.
man. That's what we're about. Thank you, Bian. You guys do work incredibly hard, so thank you so much for the efforts, because your job doesn't end when the show ends, so we absolutely love and appreciate that. Steve, maybe I can put this to you. We forget that managers, CEOs, are people too, and they've had to deal with massive stresses. If you thought losing what you lost was a lot, imagine losing a company or the potential of losing a company and surviving that. Yes, there's stress, there's trauma. You just want your people to be okay. How do we approach this on a personal level for those managers, those leaders within the workspace? How do we manage the transition back?
I've got a go-to product theory, which is mental toughness, which is basically 7 components, which you've got this checklist where you can say, hang on, company's in trouble, I'm in trouble, I'm starting to get a substance abuse problem, I'm starting to, and what do I need to tick off? And you were speaking about the why, obviously passion, composure, competence, commitment, and within that you've got your checklist to get back on track and stay. So you lose the company. It's not the end of the world. You mustn't lose yourself though. So we've talked about how can I be better, but also within mental toughness is how can I be kinder? How can I work better as a team member with, you know, your folk and with, because we've all got our struggles. We've all got enormous struggles, and we like to say it's someone else, but those struggles with health, those struggles with mental health, again, because this whole COVID thing has accelerated mental health problems, and substance abuse is, you get yourself managing that, I think you can manage anything. But you must manage yourself first.
Yeah, man, this has been the University of Life. And we're all getting masters, professors, doctorates. I love it. Let's quickly take a look at some of your
comments. Well, Daphne says, such an interesting discussion. And Daphne, I agree with you. Nandi says, good morning. I have been working from home for 3 years now, and it's nice because I'm home when my 7-year-old comes home from school. It's super boring during the day. No colleagues to laugh with, no lunch hour, and working very late at times doesn't count as overtime, which I think a lot of people struggle with. I have a friend who's working from home, and her boss will sometimes message her at 6:30 in the morning, and she's like, we need to establish working hours.
There's a time and a place,
like,
yeah.
Don't message me before 8 o'clock type of thing. But that's always a struggle.
Communication. And are we going to have all of your details up? So hopefully those sectors, those industries, those companies, those individuals can lean on you. If we've derived this much from just a few minutes with you guys, thank you so much. The bill will be in the mail somewhere, I have no doubt. But it does really leave us with a baseline. And I think we've touched on some of those key elements here. The authenticity is so vital. But the communication, speak to your employees, find out what those pressure points are. It might be a lot easier than you think to get everyone on board, but just do it and continue to invest in the most important resource, your human capital.